Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's video. I am thrilled to say we get to talk about Tactics Ogre Reborn today. This is a game that I have been looking forward to a great deal since it was announced. Not that it was announced long ago, but ever since that, I have been really looking forward to getting my hands onto it. And I have now. Preview embargo has lifted, so I can talk about it in a general sense and share some footage from the early part of the game with you. What you're going to see on the screen is really just taken from the first hour or so of play, but it gives you a sense of what to expect from Tactics Ogre. That said, you've probably already played this game. If you're a fan of Tactics RPGs, if you're a fan of Square Enix, then you probably have played Tactics Ogre in some form or another. This, like I said, is a remake of a remake. It was originally released on the Super Nintendo back in 1995, and then it was ported to the PlayStation and Sega Saturn. That game was then remade in 2010 as Tactics Ogre Let Us Cling Together for the PSP, which was one of the better PSP titles. That game is this game. Obviously, the graphics have been upscaled, so it looks nice on a big screen TV, but you are getting the Tactics Ogre experience when you play this. It hasn't been changed in any meaningful way beyond the visuals. And that's a good thing. I actually think it's really important that people play this game if they haven't already, because this was, in so many ways, the game that created a genre. A lot of people point to Final Fantasy Tactics as being the genesis of the Tactics RPG, but Tactics Ogre actually came 2 years before it. Final Fantasy Tactics was only released in 1997, whereas this one came 2 years before that. So while this game has perhaps not become the brand name that Final Fantasy Tactics has within the genre, it is in many ways the more important one. As you play it, on the modern consoles, as you play Tactics Ogre Reborn, you're probably going to feel like the systems are a little bit traditional, is probably the best way to put it. And that is for a very simple reason. This game is the one that established the tradition. There are tactics RPGs that have come since that have pushed it forward, obviously, and there has been a lot of experimentation that has happened in the genre. But Tactics Ogre has that quality to it that even though it will feel traditional, if this is the first time you've played it, then even if that you do have that feeling, it is still going to be a very good experience. And if you have played it before, then you get the nostalgia as well as for replaying a classic game over again. So what I wanted to talk about in this video is, I guess, my hopes that this is just the start for Tactics Ogre and for Ogre Battle, because for a long time this series has been put on ice. This is the first indication that we've had that Square Enix may be interested in reviving it. And in many ways, Square Enix has horribly mistreated this series. It became a Square Enix property via acquisition. So when Square and Enix merged together to become the one company, one of the Enix acquisitions was a company called Quest. Quest Software is the one that created the Tactics Ogre and Ogre Battle games. And we've only had 4 of them. So we had Tactics Ogre, this one here that we're talking about now. There was also Ogre Battle on the Super Nintendo. Then there was Ogre Battle 64 on the Nintendo 64, as the name suggests. And then there was a Game Boy Advance Tactics Ogre as well. From memory, 3 of those 4 games came from Quest before Quest was acquired. So the Game Boy Advance one may have come after the acquisition when Quest became part of Enix, but the other 3 were certainly made when Quest was an independent company. So Square Enix has had this license and they have sat on it for the longest time. Yes, they remade the game for the PSP, and that was fine. That was a very noble thing for them to do, but that's it. They've gone and made 1 million Final Fantasy games, 1 billion Dragon Quest games. They've done multiple new games in the Star Ocean series even, and some of their lesser properties. They have not touched Tactics Ogre or Ogre Battle again, and my hope is that this is their way of testing the waters to see if there's something there. It may be a case that after the success of Octopath Traveler and as well as Triangle Strategy, they may be thinking that there is a market for this stuff again, or there may have been a market that has grown for it. So perhaps there is the opportunity to bring back this classic property as well. That would certainly be my hope. And yeah, I'm really hoping that this is an opportunity for fans and for people who maybe have never experienced this series before to get into something that is just about to relaunch. One of the big reasons that I am hoping that this is Square Enix's way of reintroducing the world to Tactics Ogre and Ogre Battle is they need to finish the series. So they had a Star Wars like thing going on with this. As everybody knows, the first Star Wars film was Chapter 4, and the first trilogy was Chapters 4 through 6. People had to wait a long time to see the events before that, to see Chapters 1 through 3, at which point they probably regretted they saw them, but nonetheless, they had to wait a long time for them. And then they had to wait longer again for the third trilogy for Chapters 7 through 9. The original Ogre battle, the one that was released on Super Nintendo, was the fifth chapter, and they hadn't obviously released chapters 1 through 4 at that point. The later games are later chapters within that series, so we still don't know what happened before. We still don't have all of those events, and one presumes that the plan was to go back and fill those events in later on. They've all been mapped out. Like the concept for those games is there, but we haven't actually got them yet. One would assume the reason being all the acquisitions happened, the series kind of got put on ice, and that was that. But this is an opportunity, perhaps, if this game sells well and Square Enix realizes there's a market for the Ogre Battle series, there was some kind of brand value behind it. If this does well, then we might finally, after so many years, after over 25 years, we might finally get those earlier chapters and fill in the gaps, because there are some fans of Ogre Battle out there, not a lot anymore, but there are some of us that would really like to have those gaps filled in. So what can you expect from Tactics Ogre Reborn? Like I said before, if you haven't played this game before, if you haven't played the previous releases of it and therefore don't have any nostalgia for it, it's just going to feel like a very traditional, very classical tactics RPG. It's not going to feel like it pushes any boundaries because, of course, it's not trying to. But yeah, it is going to feel like it's a very traditional game, and that's not a bad thing. It's going to feel very refined and very well made, and that's okay. So if you did find triangle strategy earlier in the year a little bit challenging or a little bit overwhelming, then, and you're not that experienced at tactics RPGs, then this is the one to give the genre a second chance at. It will work as a very good introduction to the genre if it is new to you. At the same time, it certainly doesn't sacrifice any of the depth. So if you're a veteran of the genre, then you are going to be able to enjoy it as well, because it has plenty of units, it has plenty of varied tactics from each individual unit and how you use them on the battlefield. The battlefields themselves are very interesting. And on top of that, it tells a really good plot. This game has a very epic story. It starts out where you play as you've got a couple of kids who are kind of stuck in the middle of a war zone between competing factions, and there's lots of evil people around, and they're out to get revenge. So the first thing they do is they liberate the Duke of their local area, who then immediately recruits them into the army because he hasn't got many other soldiers. And from there, it goes into quite a deep plot that asks a lot of questions about the morality of warfare. And there's a lot of conflict within this game. I don't mean military conflict, I mean kind of moral conflict and questions that are asked of players as you go along. So that's always been a quality of the Tactics Ogre series and the Ogre Battle series, that it does have those questions that it asks you, and they're really quite interesting. They're presented in a way that is not superficial. It is meaningful, and it has a really well-written script towards that. So you're going to be quite impressed by the story, I think. And the characters are great, of course, and then you get to the combat system, which you'll also quite enjoy. So there's a lot to really like about this game. Anyway, that's all I've got to share with this video right now. Like I said, this is a early preview, and I can't talk about too much of it anyway because of embargo restrictions, and the review will be a lot more in depth, but hopefully from the footage, you've got a sense of what the game involves and how it looks. It does look very nice, I must say. I know there were some people that were a bit concerned about the sprites and the graphics, but I find it quite impressive. And I do love the way that the portraits have been spruced up for the big screen. So yeah, it's a good looking game. It plays really nicely, and hopefully you either give it another go if you've played it previously, or you're playing it for the first time and get a chance to discover what this really wonderful series is like. All right, so let me know in the comments if you have played this series before, if you're looking forward to it, if you've never played it before, what are your thoughts about it, and whether the game is going to be enough to entice you in. Other than that, have a great weekend, everybody. If you do like this video and you want to support what we do at digitallydownloaded.net, then please do subscribe to us on Patreon. You can do so for $1 a month. And in exchange for that, you do get our monthly magazine, which is a 56-page magazine about all things to do with Japanese games. So it is quite good if you do like your Square Enix stuff. You'll find it quite interesting. And then if you do want to make sure that you don't miss any of our videos, then please do hit that like and subscribe button, because every subscriber is certainly most welcome on this channel. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you at the next video.